So Gene Ramey's swinging with Stan Getz there.
Yeah, crazy chords. A lot of unprepared modulations.
What do you mean by unprepared modulations?
Just a fancy way of saying the chord that just modulates kind of out of the blue, with no setup.
Right.
There's no chord that takes you to the modulation. It just goes there.
Suddenly, boom. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we've heard, Tommy, that these guys are the Cats. What differentiates Gene Ramey's playing from Tommy Potter, for example?
I don't know, not much. There's a lot of similarity to what they're doing.
Yeah.
But and Curly Russell too, I think they kind of all sound similar to me. I would have a hard time picking them out from one another, to be honest. Mm-hmm. But there's a reason why they're the first call for that whole clique. And I think that's why I wanted to include those guys. It's like people don't really talk about them that much, yet they're on all the main records.
Right.
So, there's a reason why Bird's calling you first.
Yeah. And so, they're integrated into all the famous names that that are playing the leads and the solos.
I mean, did you hear how, on that, for example, like the way the bass worked with the piano and worked with Stan Getz in a linear way, it was very fluid, and everything just seemed to naturally match together, like they're speaking the same language and kind of weaving linearly through the chord changes. It kind of has this effortless vibe to it, even though it's quite fast and not easy harmonic music to navigate, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that kind of it also brings you back, even though now that we're doing again, virtuoso musicians playing sophisticated music at fast tempos, it's also reminding us that the bass is, always got to have that foundational kind of connection. And even if there isn't a big hot solo in the middle of the tune, that part of the ensemble is indispensable and would kind of fall apart without it being in there,
Yeah, it's total supportive role, but to be able to play bass that fast and weave through changes that much, I mean, that's virtuoso right there, and people kind of take it for granted. It's like, okay, you want to play jazz acoustic bass, all right, 1 2 1 2 3 4. That's hard.
Yeah. Well, and also like any on any instrument where you're playing at a high tempo, to keep the consistent rhythmic pulse is also way harder than you might think,
And also to not sound choppy, and like robotic, to solo and to play kind of like calm and relaxed and musical and not sound like you're just hacking your way through the chord changes and repeating yourself over and over again, and it kind of sounds stiff and not creative.
Well, that concludes this episode of Jazz Acoustic Bass, and we've got lots more coming down the pike. We'll be having future shows as we work our way through the kind of chronologically through the different eras. A couple of the shows we've done, like we jumped right into 1950s piano, and then we're going to work our way back. This time we decided to just kind of start at the beginning and go through the shows. And so we're going to have at least 4 shows, maybe more, because that's what we do here is get into it and listen to the tunes and talk about, what's going on, the history and what's going on musically. So it's always a lot to dive into, but it's great to also, just one final note about hearing some of these classic songs that I've, heard many times, like Pitter Panther Patter or whatever. When you suddenly focus on one instrument, it's amazing how much is revealed to you and the richness of the tune, where you're just kind of listening to, here's the sax solo and it's grooving along, like that Stan Getz recording. But then when you turn your ear to these specific instruments, which is kind of what our show's about, it reveals so much about the song and the music, and it's kind of like you're hearing it again for the first time, which is really cool.
I agree. I felt the same way.
Yeah. All right, Timo. Thanks. Right. And again, you can find us at Spotify, YouTube, and our Patreon channel. And we've got lots more shows coming down the pike with some great guests and other things going on. So join us soon for the Spotify podcast.